Hey, this is Johnny Thompson, number one here. Today I have a guest, head coach of St. Mary in Leavenworth, Kansas, Coach Chuck Kearney, and I want to thank him for being a part of Johnny Thompson, number one today.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Coach, I just want to start off by asking you, you're going into your ninth season at St. Mary. You guys have been extremely successful at the conference level. You guys have never taken below third at the Kansas Collegiate Athletic Conference. You guys won a title in 2020, and then you guys just absolutely dominated the KCAC this past season in 2025. You guys had champions at 125, 133, 141, 157, 165, and 197, plus three runner-ups. Talk about this team and why you guys were able to dominate at such a high level.
Well, part of it, it's kind of how we do our business. We start with trying to do the culture piece first. We talk about the successful programs are a group of people that give more than they take. Leadership is doing your job first and then helping others do theirs. But one of the kind of the key components of what we're really trying to focus on is getting to a point where we can celebrate other successes without envy. If somebody gets a big concept, we can get excited about that with them and for them. Every time that happens, if everybody in our program does that, we end up having it come back to us 30-fold when we do something good. The other part of all this stuff is I work really hard on never calling our student athletes kids. They're not kids, right? I expect them to compete like men. And women. I expect them to go out and be responsible and accountable and all those different things. It's degrading to call them a kid. So every time I hear a coach, the kids are different. No, they're not. We're different. And so it's taking that accountability personally to work on the stuff that needs to get done, and remembering what I felt like as a college guy. I didn't feel like a kid. When I was 18 to 22, I thought I owned the world. And so to have somebody call me a kid, nobody called me a kid. So I just don't like that terminology. So we work real hard to make sure that we don't. I occasionally will slip up and call it a boys team and a girls team because of the 5.5 years working at a high school. But at the end of the day, that's a big part of it. The other part is that we've worked hard to give the student athlete control. It's my program, it's my design, but it's their team. It's their accomplishments. My wrestling, my career's done. It's all about them now. And so if I can get to where, we have that as a coach, we have the ability to take that step away from it. I'm not on the roller coaster with them. So as they go high, I can still stay grounded and kind of pull them back down. If they get low, I can pick them back up and help them get back to that center point where we can just have them be the best of their average. And if we do that, we'll be just fine. So that's some of the stuff we do. Obviously, I would be called old school. I don't think I'm old school at all. I believe in psychology. I believe in nutrition. I believe in rest and recovery. I believe in a lot of things that to me, old school doesn't. But we believe in lots of live wrestling. We believe, in practices, we've got to wrestle live. Do you hurt your partners? No. Do you concede points when somebody gets in deep on you and you could get hurt? Yes. But we're still doing a lot of live wrestling. I believe in lots of competitions. I don't think that we're Penn State. I don't have a practice room full of post-grads to help sharpen our student athletes. So we need to get into competition and get that sharpening done. So, we had a young man that was our second or third 33-pounder and our number's 2 41-pounder, and he almost had 47 matches this year, or he did have 47 matches this year. And he would have broke 50 had we got him in a couple more duels. Just those are things that we do that's just, I think, a little bit different than the norm. And we sell the fact that if you're a wrestler, there's one thing you have to do: wrestle. Everything else. You got to wrestle. And so we try to get them to embrace it. And that's the challenge at the beginning of the year, is get our student athletes to embrace the change, because it's different. High schools, they're not wrestling as live as much. They're not getting as many matches in a collegiate season. We try to go Thursday, Saturday, every week. We want to have those two wins. We want to, we get up to conference tournament time. We wrestle the Saturday prior to conference. I don't want to take 2 weeks off before conference and then have 2 more weeks off before nationals. We got to keep them wrestling, keep them competing, keep them kind of in rhythm.
Yeah, that helps to explain a lot about the success that you guys have had. You're looking at it from the NAIA national tournament perspective. You had Key finish off his career with a extremely strong third place finish to become a 2-time All-American. Taylor, national champion last year, didn't do as well as he probably wanted to do, but still 4th place, and he had an extremely tough bracket. Coming back to take 4th place was great. And then you also had 3 others who finished 1 match shy of getting an All-American honor. So just talk about some of these guys that have been such a big party program, like Gee and Taylor and Blackburn.
Yeah, well, start off with, want to correct you a little bit. Brody's got another year left.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, that's okay. With the COVID years and all the different stuff, it's hard to keep track, right? Brody's got left, and again, he had as a sophomore, he was an All-American. He came back this year, and it's as old as the test of time. You get yourself caught up in trying to protect something that you already have instead of going out and hunting it. And we went through a little bit of that with Brody this year. And that was kind of the challenge, was to get him to where, listen, this is a new challenge. You're an All-American and will be forever. Now it's, hey, let's be a 2-time. Let's compete for a championship. Let's add that next piece instead of protecting it. So it was a real growing year for Brody. He got to the end of the season and everything was back as it should be. He had his weight under control. He had physically got himself in a great spot. He mentally was in a good spot and was able to go out there and wrestle his best at the end of the year. I would have liked to have him to have been able to wrestle better early, to see if maybe his best at the end could have been better. But that's his journey, right? That's his process. And we're just glad to be a part of that. Hartwell Taylor, with Hartwell, he lost a match in the semifinals to the guy he beat in the finals a year ago. It was a great match. He got into a situation where he typically would have caused a stalemate, and he tried to finish this time and ended up giving up the takedown. And then spent the rest of the match chasing it. And Evan Potter from Southern Oregon is well coached. He's a tough kid, a great competitor, and that's how it shakes. And so, but with that, the imprint that Hartwell's left in our program isn't the wins. It's not the championships. What Hartwell did to our program, a couple things. Number one, he demonstrated. He was a guy that quietly did his work. He was the guy that would sneak in and get the extra workout, and became the great example that we could point to. He cared about the people around him. He was one of those leaders that you have a handful of them in a career, and you sit there and you watch it as it's happening, and you're saying to yourself, how can I duplicate that? How can I repeat the creation of that? Because it's super hard. So we're gonna miss having him in the lineup. He provided some swagger and some cool, and then we got tougher on our feet because he didn't give up points. And then everybody in the program's like, well, shoot, he doesn't get taken down with a single. Why should I? And it just that example became huge. Riker Blackburn, we had him 2 years. God, I would have loved to have had him for 4. He came to us his very first tournament. He pins the guy that ends up being a 2-time national champ from Grandview. Gets taken down, looks like a kind of a fool. Boom! Next thing you know, he gets reversal, turns the guy over, turns him a couple times, gives up a takedown, reverses the guy. I'm like, holy shit, Riker! Did you ever do anything on your feet? He's a coach. I give up a takedown and let the match get started. And so being able to work with him again to where he got to a point where he could win matches on his feet and then was just so tough on top. And he had that, again, he had an ability just to be calm and stay within himself and compete. Was the guy that you'd want riding shotgun with you. The week before he left to go home, he comes to my house. I've been talking about building this water feature. He says, "Coach, we got to build it. I'm gone in a week." And so we spent 2 full days, built this big giant water feature, so he's just that kind of kid. Freddie Brajas, just another guy that's just, the kind of a quiet guy that all of a sudden in the locker room, you hear him say, "Guys, man, isn't it awesome when coach says, hey, it's time to hook it up. It's time to go live." I love wrestling live, and he was kind of the first person that became a real proponent where he got the guys excited and taking pride in how much live wrestling do. So just, a great group, and whenever you have a team that's successful, the first place you look is at what kind of leadership do you have. There were practices this year that I stopped halfway through and said, "Guys, you young guys, which one of you guys is going to be Hartwell Taylor? Who's going to fill that job? Who's going to, I'm not talking about weight class. I'm talking about leadership. Who's going to be those guys?" And so I think we're in a situation where we've got a bunch of young men that are wanting to step up. It's always by committee. But that was the big part of kind of what helped us get there. The other part is there's something that happens when you keep in perspective what it is we're doing. I don't talk to them about winning national championships. I talk to them about winning their last match. I want them to because winning a national championship, if you get beat at the turn, well, hell, you can't win it. Well, I can't accomplish my goal. But if my goal is winning the last match, and I sincerely believe that, first, third, fifth, seventh, I want to win that last match. Now, obviously, being a champion is pretty cool. We give you a ring, you get big, huge plaques, you get all this different stuff. But winning your last match is important. That propels you for what's next. So that those guys that kind of helped us do that. And then the other part is it's amazing what happens when the outside world perceives you differently. When we first started at St. Mary, I mean, we were, nobody respected us. Nobody, we joined a conference that didn't have a great reputation. We had all these things that they kind of lent themselves to us not being that good. All of a sudden we start earning respect around the country. And now it's, hey, St. Mary's got a good program. Hey, man, you guys are tough. Hey, and so now that the outside perception is the same as what we want our internal perception to be, then all of a sudden it just reinforces itself.
Speaking as an NAIA program, something that's very different from NAIA compared to D1, D2, D3, NJCAA, and the California Community College Athletic Association is at the NAIA level, we're allowed to send 12 kids to nationals. And you guys have a very unique situation between Freddie Barajas and Roman De La Cruz. And I have found that to be very interesting because these guys have met in the KCAC finals 2 years in a row. They also, I'm pretty sure they met at the Friends Invitational earlier this year.
Yeah, they didn't wrestle that match, but yeah, they've wrestled a ton. And these two guys, they live together. They're I mean, I don't want to say they're best friends, but because they might be more than that. They might be, more like family. I asked Freddie after the tournament this year, I say, what are your plans next year? Trying to hope that we could keep him around and keep him training and working out with us. And he says, hey, I've got to stay one more year, coach. And I go, yeah, why is that? So I got to help Roman do it.
That's awesome.
So and again, with that goes back to what we started with. If you can celebrate other successes without envy, those guys, there were so many times this year because I had them weigh in. I mean, they weighed in, both of them. We have a dual meet. They'd both weigh in. And because I knew that they were both cutting enough weight that if I gave one of them a week off, hell, there's no telling how big they'd, right? So we'd have them both weigh in. And There were times where, where Freddie would come up and say, "Man, listen, I'm not feeling super great. It wasn't an easy cut or whatever. Hey, let Roman have this one." There were times when Roman would come to me and say, "Listen, Freddie needs a match. I'm okay not wrestling this one." And they were, I mean, I would have never done that as a student athlete. I would have never. I mean, I would have tried to break his arm. That guy wants my spot. And again, that's one of the really cool things about the 12 is that we don't have to worry about that. With it, with us, we never rank those two kids off. They never wrestled a match to see who the starter was. That ranking match will happen in the conference finals. When at the end of this year, Brajas got beat by a guy that just was a real conflict in styles for him, and it potentially put the seeding of the conference tournament where there was an argument to be made that Brajas and Freddie would be on the same side of the bracket, and Freddie just says, "I won't wrestle him in the semifinals. I'll wrestle him in the finals, but I won't wrestle him in the semifinals." Like, God, whoa. Hey, this is conference tournament time. We got to put friendship aside. We got to, we respect each other and respect the company. No, I'm not going to wrestle him. So it's a real neat thing. And again, it's a part of the 12 that I really like. Is it also, I have no motivation as a coach to move one of them into a different weight class because they both can wrestle. It would have been horrible to pull Roman in and say, "Roman, I got to have you at 25." Right. And that's what happens at D1 places. That's what happens at the top D2s. They call the kid in and say, "Listen, you got to go down because you can't go up." Right. That's counterintuitive to the wrestling mindset. And usually the tougher, the guy above you is pretty damn good too. And so you end up having to force a kid to cut more weight than he needs to. In this situation, we don't have to do it, which is cool.
I agree 100%. So, we've been talking about a lot about these guys as wrestlers, but throughout this interview so far, you've probably used the term student athlete probably 3 or 4 different times. You guys have also had a lot of success in the classroom, crowning some NWCA academic All-Americans. Talk about the balance between getting them to succeed on the mat and in the classroom.
Well, part of it is again, one of the things I discovered as a young coach, if I had a really good recruiting class, the next 2 or 3 years, I was a really good coach, right? If I didn't have a very good recruiting class, man, those next 2 or 3 years, I didn't know anything. I was a horrible coach. So part of it is the recruiting, right? You recruit, you get a type of kid. I said the word I don't want to use, but you get a type of student athlete, you get a type of young man that comes into your program and that's going to be academic successful because they have that goal. One of the things, and again, my history, I was a young man that went to Oklahoma State University, and I went there to wrestle. On my college visits, I made the legal limit of visits. I don't know if I was ever in a classroom or in a professor's office. I was in a weight room. I was in a wrestling room. I looked at the facility, and then I hung out with the guys in the program. I went to college to just be a wrestler, and little did I know that I cheated myself. Right? I mean, I was always more than a wrestler. I was somebody's son. I was somebody's boyfriend. I was somebody's brother. I was somebody's best friend. I was all these different things. And to just be a wrestler was limiting. And so we talked to them about it. We talked to the student athlete coming in. We talked to them about, hey, listen, don't limit yourself by just being a wrestler. Because wherever you do, the successes you have or the failures you have in your life, they all come back into your wrestling. There's not a darn thing you do about it. You can't because they come inside of you. And so if your self-esteem is down every time you walk into an algebra class, you hang your head and you hide, well, that shame follows you into the wrestling room. And if you walk into that class and you're fighting it and you're attacking it, and you may not be getting a great grade, you may be a C minus, but you're in there every day working to achieve. Well, that attitude follows you into the wrestling room as well. So that stuff like that we talk about. The other part is the way we scholarship at the University of St. Mary. Financially, it makes more sense for us to recruit better students. So if you get more scholarship money, the better student you are.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I was just going to say, you were talking about recruiting and the importance of recruiting. You know, you know as well as I do that Kansas, and particularly, does have a tremendous amount of high school talent. But going back over the years, I've been a wrestling fan now for 35 years. There haven't really been a lot of opportunities, collegiately speaking, in the state of Kansas, nor are there in Texas or Arkansas. And I'm looking over your roster from last year, 4 kids from Texas, 5 kids from Kansas, a kid from Arkansas, and then 3 kids from Washington, another state that doesn't have a lot of college opportunity. What does it mean for you as a coach to provide that opportunity where otherwise it's usually not?
Well, number one, when I took the job here at St. Mary, the first question I had from the vice president committee was, "What's your plan with recruiting?" And the original plan was, I'm going to, one, recruit what I know, but two, look at the areas that are underserved, right? The very first team we had 4 guys from Florida on it. I'd have more Florida guys. I just have been, the programs down there are doing a lot better job of, and there's a couple more of them now, so that they're kind of dividing up the talent a little bit. But the going to those places that are underrepresented just makes sense. The other part of that equation is that again, we don't scholarship based on just wrestling ability. The young man or young woman coming into our program, they have to, the boxes we've got to check. I mean, if you have a financial need, if you're a 3.4 or above, actually 3.1 and above and full Pell, we can put together a phenomenal scholarship package for you. Now, notice I didn't say anything about how good your single leg was, right? Because that's not the mission of the university. That's our mission. But the mission of the university isn't that. So we have to cast a broad net, and we're getting now to the point where we're no longer trying to fill a roster. Now we're becoming more selective in who we're talking to. We're if you're not a state placer, I can't. I mean, you're going to be so far behind the room. It's going to be hard to catch you up. Now, if you're a California kid or you're an Ohio kid or you're a Pennsylvania kid, being a state placer, man, you might just win the whole damn thing. But the traditional states we're talking about, that is kind of now the new standard for us. If you're not at a 3.1, that's kind of the new standard for us. Now, do we make exceptions? Absolutely. But I need to be sold on it. Right. And we had a young man commit to us last night that didn't place in state, but I think he's going to be really good. Because he's so hungry, he's smart, he's athletic, his arms are flipping gigantic, and so he's like, okay, this guy's got a fighting chance to be good because he's serious about it and he's honest with himself, knowing that he's got a lot to learn, and so we'll take a chance on that guy, particularly when he's a 3.5 student.
Yeah.
So that stuff all kind of together in what we're trying to accomplish.
Absolutely, and you're coaching at the NAIA level now, coming from D1 Oregon.
Yeah.
What has been like? There had to be some major changes, some major contrast and comparisons. What's it like going from being the head coach of the Ducks to being the head coach of the Saints?
Man, the job itself is the way you build a program at the Division I level is through attrition. You go out, you got your 9.9 scholarships, soon to be whatever that new deal is. But, in the day it was 9.9 and you go out and you spend your money and if you redshirt that kid out of the chute and then you spend that next year. And then at the end of that year, you kind of knew what he was, and if he's not contending to be an All-American or he's not at the top end of the conference tournament making stuff happen, man, you're looking to replace them, and so a part of that world was how do you replace them? Well, you have uncomfortable conversations, you overwork them, The kid comes in and quit. You thank him. Hey, appreciate you. Appreciate you coming in here. And the young man say, I'm out. This is more than I wanted. Okay, well, thank you. So you're building. You're sorting. You're not selecting. You're sorting. You're sorting out. You're separating those that can from those that maybe can't. And at the NAI level, what we're doing is, one, it's roster based. Hey, these universities, all these NAI schools, all these D2s and D3s that are adding men's and women's wrestling, they're not wrestling fans. They don't love wrestling. They don't say, hey, you know what? We want to add wrestling because it's so good for young men and women to compete and work hard, and our country needs it. And by golly, we're going to jump in and carry this flag because it's good for America and it's great for our families and it teaches all the right. They're doing it because of tuition dollars, right? We've hit, in 2026, we're hitting a admissions nightmare. They expect a huge drop. 1.5 million less kids are going to go to college than have gone in the past. And 80% of them, 75% of them are male. Right. And so now all of a sudden we're going, whoa. And schools are closing left and right. Well, they're adding wrestling because they see a sport that, we've got, the last 3 years, we've had over 60 on men's and women's program. We've had over 60 students. That generates, on average, just under $1 million a year in tuition dollars for the University of St. Mary.
Yeah,
So you can't build a program based on attrition. The words I hear at St. Mary is not championship; it's retention. Right. So we have to build program. We have to build this program through retention, and so it's okay. How can I work them hard enough? How can I get them to believe enough? How can I get them committed? And how can I get it where we're together regardless? And then how can I push them? And when we get to that point where they're like, Coach, I'm out. How can I bring them back in? Right. Because we can't afford to lose anybody. We had, there were student athletes at Oregon. There were student athletes when I wrestled at Oklahoma State that just one day you didn't see them again. They're just gone, you don't know what happened to them. They just, all of a sudden they weren't there anymore and you never saw them again. So with at St. Mary, we can't be that way. We have to. I had a year where we had some things go wrong, and one, I was trying to stretch my number a little bit because I had to get enough to justify another assistant coach. So I kind of took on some kids that some student athletes I normally wouldn't have taken on, and ultimately those guys didn't make it. And so my numbers my retention dropped a little bit. I got called in on it. Like, hey, Coach. Now my athletic director, a guy named Rob Miller, is awesome. And he says, now listen, we're not going to focus on what happened with this class. I want to know what was the difference between this class and the last 3 classes where your retention was above 95%. As well. Here's the difference. And I kind of went through it with him. I knew going in that these 2 guys weren't going to make it. But we felt I felt like I had to get that number. So we've gotten to a point now where we're comfortable with our number, and it allows us to be a little bit more selective in our pursuit. And then again, like I said, it's about retention. So you talk about the difference between D1 and NAI. That's a huge difference. The other difference is at the University of Oregon, I recruited and I coached wrestling. Now I had interviews I had to do. There was fundraising stuff, events that I had to go to, but I didn't have to raise money. Right? We did a tailgate for football where the entire program barbecued and did stuff because I wanted our student athletes to still participate in servant leadership and provide a service to our alumni groups and participate in it because I thought it was an important lesson. But that was it. At St. Mary, our wrestlers work Kansas City Chiefs football game. We work security. There's 8, 9, 10 games. Playoffs, right? And so, and we do all that stuff. And Right now, the university has just purchased a new facility for us, and the first order of business for me now is that we've got to raise money for wrestling mats and this, that, and that.
Yeah.
Where at the University of Oregon, I make a phone call. Hey, let's get equipment manager. I want Resolite. I want the old fashioned good old Resolite. We're not going to move them. Let's get them wedged in there and get them ordered. And that would be the extent of it. Now, we're doing other stuff. The other thing that's nice is we go to Reno every couple of years and wrestle at the TOC. That's the only time we're in a plane. When I was at the University of Oregon, I was in a plane 3 times a month, traveling, and then recruiting was even worse. So it's we're in the center of wrestling here, just outside of Kansas City. Everything is a 3-hour drive or less. Sundays are truly a recovery for us, whereas at Oregon it was a travel day. Now there's a lot of stuff I miss that's super positive. I miss walking into those big arenas, and the hair in the back of your neck kind of stands up, and you're never alone. At the NEI level, I spent tons of time alone, driving someplace, watching high school wrestling, or going to a signing, or, where, I can't afford to travel one of my assistants. I got to have somebody manning the shop. And so, and for the first 4 years, I didn't have an assistant, anyway, there's a lot of differences there. But at the end of the day, I'm still doing the same thing, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
Motivate, we're trying to maximize, we're trying to excite, and I truly wish that I could have some of the wisdom I have now when I was at Oregon, because I'd approach things way different.
And speaking of Oregon, these kind of rumors are, for a fan like myself, there may not be any truth to it, but they did recently ask the athletic director his feelings, and he said he wasn't completely ruling out the idea of perhaps bringing duck wrestling back. Any feelings on that?
Well, I would love to see it happen. I think that the one of the biggest crimes in all of college athletics is what's happened with wrestling at the D1 level, particularly at Oregon. That program got dropped. It didn't have to be dropped. We had the Office of Civil Rights tell our general counsel that we did not have a Title IX issue because of the fact that they had been meeting the interest level of the female student population. They had also continued expansion every 5 to 6 years. 7 years. They were adding another female sport, which they had last 15 years. They added 4 sports. They added baseball with competitive cheer. There was not a Title IX issue. So what could it be? Well, it must be money. You have to fund a baseball program and a cheer program. It must be money. At Oregon, it can't be money at Oregon, right? Now, the money issue at
Nike,
Oregon.
Sorry, I can't help but say that. Nike.
Yeah, and with all that stuff, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that would probably be 3 different interviews, but there was no reason to drop wrestling at Oregon, and ultimately what it came down to, I think, is that Oregon wanted to be a Southeastern Conference school, and we had some people in there. The athletic director, guy named Pat Kilkenny, nice enough guy, but not an athletic director. He'd never been an athletic director. He's an insurance salesman, and he doesn't buy into college athletics in what it's supposed to be. He's just a fan, and he wanted a baseball program. And so the decisions he made and all that stuff, they just weren't that good. And the very last thing he said to me at the very end of a 1.5-year battle, where we raised enough money to pay for our facility, we raised enough money to support ourselves for the most part, except for salaries, and we get it all laid out. He looks at me and he says, "Coach, if I would have known what it was like, how hard and awful this decision was. If I would have known 18 months ago, I never would have done it." And I said to him, I said, Pat, we're all still here. Our wrestlers are still here. Our coaches are still here. Our room is still here. The mats are still here. Everybody's still here. Wouldn't it be cool if you just came out and said, you know what? I've looked at what the wrestling community is willing to do for wrestling to keep it here. And I'm going to ask my golf programs and my tennis programs to do the exact same thing. My cross program, my soccer program, I'm going to ask them to do the exact same thing. And it's going to be known as the Kilkenny model of funding athletics. And he says, Coach, he said, too many people would look way too bad.
You know,
Yeah. So anyway,
trust me, you know, I'm turning 40 here in a couple of weeks. Hopefully I don't look like it. Especially if I shaved today, I would have looked a lot younger. Yeah. But you know, and I don't want to put anybody down. Johnny Thompson #1 is not a negative place. I don't want to ever be negative, but I will say this to you. One of my first interviews I ever did when I first got into trying to cover college wrestling is I was working for a website that doesn't even exist anymore. It's called thewrestlingmall.com. And my boss was a guy named Matt Crumey. And anyway, I didn't know back then that you weren't supposed to approach an athletic director. I didn't know you weren't supposed to do that. So I did. And I really got the same kind of vibe from Pat Kilkenny that you did, that he was just, I like baseball, you know, and I love baseball too. And I go to, I'm a wrestling guy, but I go to college baseball games, almost every weekend. So I definitely get that. Like I said, I'm not here to put down the guy at all, but I just want to let you know that speaking with him for probably about a good half hour, I got the exact same impression from him that you just gave.
Yeah, and again, like I said, sometimes you get into a fist fight with something bigger than you can handle, and I think that's what happened to us. And then the other part is we kind of got surprised. I got surprised. Coach Finley, who was still around the program and worked in the Duck Athletic Fund, the main fundraising arm, we were shocked because 6 weeks earlier, we're having meetings about a brand new facility, and we're in this area.
Yeah. Coach, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. We're down to like the last 60 seconds of the interview. I just want to thank you on behalf of Johnny Thompson #1. It's been an absolute pleasure. We sure hope to have you back on the program again in the future. And I wish you the best of success in 25, 26.
All right. Well, thank you for having me, Johnny, and keep on keeping on.
Peace.